Welcome. How y'all doing? Yeah. Excited? Yeah. Good. Well, I can't tell you how excited I am to have Jay here. Jay has been a huge supporter of our cyber PR class, and he comes out every semester, and he even keeps coming back, even despite we're usually in diesel. He still comes back and thinks highly of us. And every time he comes out, myself and my class are always filled with so much of excitement and optimism about the future of our industry, both creatively and as a business. And so I felt sort of guilty for all these semesters for sort of hoarding them to myself, that I asked him this year if he would please come and do sort of more of a public presentation to sort of share those sort of same sort of feelings that we usually have afterwards. So we're so excited to have him here. So if you're not familiar with Jay, a little bit of his sort of biography. He's the owner of a company called Digsin, which is a new singles-focused music company that allows subscribing fans to obtain music for free. So he's all for free music. Digsin signs new artists to deals that leverage new platforms, social networks, and analytics that expose music to a wider audience, building popularity outside of traditional methods. He's the author of 2 books. His first book, Futurehit.dna, is the #1 songwriting book on Amazon and explores how digital technology has changed the way people discover music and examines what an artist needs to make their song more hit-worthy in the digital age. Before that, he had a couple of smaller jobs out there, like being the Senior VP of Music Strategy for CMT, Vice President of Music and Label Relations for Yahoo Music, and Senior Music Director of the Box Music Network. So with all that in mind, let's please welcome Jay Frank.
Can you all hear me in the back?
Yes, sir.
Good. All right, very, very important. You have 7 seconds to grab your listener for any song before you all of a sudden start to lose their attention. You have 7 seconds to grab somebody with your song. Now, this is not something that I'm just saying just to be a gimmick to start this off. This is something that is seen through a lot of data that I've looked at for now upwards of over a decade. The reality is that in a fractured marketplace with so much music out there and so many different things vying for your attention on the web, on your phone, in your lives, the reality is that if you want to get somebody to like your song, the song that you're working with, the song that you're creating, the song that you are a part of, you have 7 seconds to grab their attention. Now, obviously I'm starting off and I'm getting this in really early because it's really important. This is the most important thing, and that's basically what's also happening right now, is that if you're not actually taking your music and giving them the most important thing up front, people are just not going to grab it. Think about all the things that come into your life. Think about things that are not music related. Think about what it takes to actually grab your attention and say, I'm going to spend time on this versus something else. All of a sudden you start looking at that and you probably say 7 seconds might actually be too long, but when you actually look at the data, that's roughly what the average person gives in terms of consideration for most media out there. What we're going to do tonight is I'm going to be talking to you a bit about the creative process and how this 7 seconds is arrived at, how it's important and how it's impacting what becomes popular in music today. And then we're also going to be talking a bit later on after we get through this on some more of the business of holistic trends, so that we can be able to take this and say, all right, what's the most important? How do I actually make money? Because I'm sure what everybody's telling you is congratulations, you're going to join the music business. Now there's no money left. Well, that's a myth, and you guys are actually going to be all entering the music business, in my opinion, at probably one of the most exciting times the music business has ever had. So we'll get to that in a minute. But right now I want to start talking about the creative process, and to do that it's actually important to go and really look at the history of exactly technology and exactly how that has impacted what songs became popular. It's not just that all of a sudden the web and mobile has made things radically different in what songs become popular. Technology has actually always had a role in determining what songs become popular. If you think about it, it started with the radio. Really, as a technological device, all of a sudden, radio was beaming in songs from places you didn't even know where it was coming from, and it would come through your speakers. By the way, when radio first came out, basically the music industry said, this is going to destroy our entire industry. which of course, you know, basically I think anytime I hear those phrases, I think, well, this is a good business to get into. But you basically, you look and, you know, things would come out and, you know, and it doesn't matter what the technology was, whether it was going to be turntables, reel-to-reels, 8-track, all of these things actually impacted the kind of music that you heard. It impacted whether you listened to singles, whether you listened to albums, are you listening to songs, or are you listening to completed works? All of these things were dictated not specifically by what the artist wanted. These things were dictated by the way it was distributed and the way it gets to you, and it's always been that way. The interesting thing of the difference right now is that we are in a place where more music can get out than ever before. When you had that time when it took to get on the radio, you really needed people to get your music out there. When it was predicated on record stores that had a very limited quantity, you had to know people in order to get your music out there. And most music couldn't get out there. Now, anybody in this room can go and spend $10 and your music is everywhere around the world. The great part about it is everybody in this room can get into the music industry tonight. That's a great thing. The bad part is you now have more competition than ever before. Let me give you a really, really sobering fact. If you wanted to listen to every single song that came out today, Tuesday is a release date. So if you wanted to listen to every single song that came out today, and you listened to all those songs for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, didn't sleep, didn't do anything else, didn't tweet, didn't keep, didn't do anything, you can listen to only 5% of recorded music. It is physically possible for you to only hear 5% of recorded music that comes out. The other 95% you can never possibly get to. And the real sobering fact is that you can only listen to 5% of the music that comes out this week, and then you get to next week, and you can only listen to another 5%, and then another 5%. And all the other music just keeps falling by the wayside. So it's not even just the fact that you can't hear everything that comes out and making it difficult for your music to get to somebody's ears, but it's also very, very hard for those songs to gain traction, because everybody basically wants to move on to the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. The reality is that when you go and you look at all the methods that are at our disposal, everybody is just churning through lots and lots of music. Blogs are basically making hay out of just going through dozens of artists every single week. And all of those produce a little something. All of those potentially produce a little bit of a toehold. All of those might actually produce a glimmer of hope. But the reality is that it's all noise. It's all noise, especially because we, by nature of being in this room, we are all music fans. We all love this stuff. We live and we breathe this stuff. The rest of the world is too busy concerned about everything else going on. They spent the last 2 weeks worrying about a plane halfway around the world. They didn't worry about what song was coming out. So the reality is that how are you going to grab their attention when they can't possibly listen to everything, when there is so much noise out there outside of music, let alone inside of music? The truth is, one of the things that has remained constant is that it still takes 5 to 7 listens of a song in order for that song to remain popular for that person. If you think about the songs that enhance your life, think about the songs that really make a difference to you, that you can sing if I just named the title of that song right now. Those songs generally take you 5 to 7 times of hearing it before it actually becomes something that you will remember, that will become a part of your life, that you will really want to embrace for the longest time. Now, in the old days, 10 years ago, the old days, basically the hardest part was getting somebody to listen to that song once. Because you had to go through a gatekeeper to get you on a radio station, you had to convince some press to talk about you, you had to beg some club owner to let you into the club. It was always a hurdle to get somebody to listen to that song once. The beauty about right now is that one listen is easy. I talked about 5% of being, 5% of music is only what you can hear, but let's be honest. You're not going to listen to entire albums of music that sucks. You're not going to listen to genres that you hate. You're not going to listen to things that you've never heard of in languages that you don't know. There's a lot of that, like 95%, that you're not going to get to, justifiably so. The reality is that getting somebody to hear a song once is easy. Any one of you who's working with an artist can basically go talk to this room and say, hey, I've got a new song, I'm working with this, I'd love for you all to check it out. And everybody in this room knows exactly where to go to hear that song right now within the next 60 seconds. If I name for you any song, how many of you can listen to that song in 30 seconds or less? Raise your hands. Whole room. So that's the easy part. The second listen. This is the mistake that I think most people make when it comes to marketing music. It's not how do you get to the first listen, how do you get to the second listen? The second listen is the hardest part, because when you get to a second listen, now you're getting to a point where you're going to start to breed familiarity. Because the reality is that, great, everybody in this room, I can name any of the songs that I work with, you'll all hear it, you'll all give me your opinion on it. But then you already have your opinion, you'll remember that opinion, and chances are the opinion will be like, yeah, I heard that song, that was pretty good, that was all right. You know, and you'll be able to say enough that if you got talking about it at a party, at an industry event, you'll be able to produce a relatively knowledgeable opinion of that song. But why hear it again? Because you got to go listen to that other batch of music that just came out. And you got to go and be informed about those songs. And you got to be informed about everything else, because you don't want to be left behind. Nobody wants to be left behind. So how are you going to listen to that song a second time? This is now even more vitally important, because we are moving into the world where streaming will become the dominant form of revenue. If you haven't already talked about it, the RIAA released a study last week of 2013 sales, and streaming now takes up 21% of recorded music revenue. 21%. That's up from 3% 5 or 6 years ago. And that number is only going to grow. And the thing is about streaming is great. You know, great, I can monetize anytime anybody listens. If everybody listens to the song only once, how much money are you really going to make? Nothing. I always kind of say, why is the record industry scared of streaming? Because, pardon my language, you know, it used to be if they went and released a shit song, they'd be able to go and say, all right, well, somebody bought it for 99 cents or $1.29. And if they listen to it twice and never listen to it again, what do I care? Well, now, if they go and do that in streaming and they stream it once or twice, and they say, oh, this song sucks, well, all of a sudden their revenue has plummeted by 99%. The real threat of streaming, the real important thing of why you have to make and work with the best quality music possible, is because bad music is going to experience a 99% decrease in revenue. On the other hand, good music, the stuff that you get to 2 listens that gets you to 5 to 7 listens that becomes the songs you listen to for your entire life, that music will make more money than ever before. What happened? What happened was, obviously, technology changed, technology, focus changed, and what also happened is that we had a general lack of understanding as a music business to go and say, can we work with music that fits within the way that you consume music? Can we actually have something that actually plays into what's going on? And the reality is what's happening now is that people in the last couple of years have really started to get a pulse on the type of music that you want to hear and how you want to hear it in order to be able to get at making sure people consume more of their music more often. And it's not just about reading data and being able to understand trends, although that's a big part of it. The reality is that the whole pattern's changed, because first it was music came from the radio, maybe you heard it on television, somebody listened and they said, hey, what is this? And then they wanted to go and tell their friends. But now, of course, what you basically end up happening instead is you basically have just a plethora of sites, very few of which actually have a common core. So you have a lot of different communities all around the world, all in different places, all with different revenue streams, all with different patterns, making it difficult to really find something where, as a whole, we can sit here in a room and actually find commonality. It's going to be very difficult. When we do, by the way, that's when it reaches down into the rest of the world, the people who are more concerned about what's going on in the news and who their friends are dating than what music is coming out. Those people gravitate to the top of the charts, mostly because they don't have time to figure out all this stuff that we do. They wait to see what filters to the top and say, you know what, I'm just going to like the top 20. That's about it. That's all I really care about. And part of it is because the rest of it just confuses them. It's just too much. There's a great book that came out about a decade ago called The Paradox of Choice. One of the important things in marketing across any businesses is that when people are given too many choices, the reality is that they tend to choose nothing at all. If you think about yourself when you go, I always tell people, if you really want to understand how to market music, pay attention to what you do for any other product other than music. Clothing stores, gift stores, movie theaters, magazines, apps, doesn't matter what it is. How many times have you ever gone on Netflix and spent 20 minutes trying to figure out what you're going to watch and then never watch anything? Right? Don't you think that's what's happening to some people when they go online to listen to music? Because it is. Why do you think they gravitate to the top 10? Because what happens if you really want to watch something on Netflix and you can't figure it out? You go to two places. You go to most popular on Netflix or what's recommended to you, and you're just like, oh, yeah, that one. That's what happens in music. That's what happens when the rest of America goes and listens to the top 10. It's the same exact thing. So the paradox of choice is basically understanding that you have to do the best to filter down so that people can actually effectively make a choice, because too many things overwhelms people and it confuses them. So the interesting thing is that when I started studying what was making songs hits, I actually started to notice a common trend that I hadn't really anticipated, but we started seeing this in data. And it didn't really matter whether you were listening to it on Spotify, watching it on YouTube, listening to it on Pandora, on a website, on your iPod, in mobile, didn't really matter. The interesting thing was that when you listened on a radio, you didn't know when you discovered a song what point of the song you were going to come at. Some people are going to listen to it when they're flipping through stations. Some people it's just going to be on in the background. Some people it's going to be on in a variety of different places. But an interesting phenomenon happened a little more than a decade ago when we made the shift for digital music to be the discovery. And that all of these things, all of these platforms, all of them shared a single commonality in the music discovery process. And that commonality, which is going to sound obvious, but wasn't, and still isn't to a lot of people, is that every single play, every single time that you discover a song, every single play of a song starts at 0 seconds. Now that seems very, very weird. Well, of course, all music starts at the beginning. Tell me something I don't know. This is new in the discovery process. If you think about this, when your parents, when people were listening to music on the radio, they were focused on a lot of different distraction points that basically meant you came into the music at a hook of the song. You came into the music in some other way. But now, when I go and tell you to like a song, your impressions of that song are going to be formed by the beginning of the song. Every single one of you. This is new. This is something that most people fail to remember when they're creating a song. They focus on saying, "Oh, let's go. I got to get in the groove. I gotta feel. Oh, we gotta lay down this beat. We gotta do." All well and good, except for the fact that most people don't have the time to pay attention to that. I did I first looked at this. There was about a decade ago, and there was a Strokes video that had David Cross as a DJ in the beginning of the video. I'm at Yahoo. The record label calls me up. Oh, we're really, really excited about this video. David Cross is in it. The audience loves David Cross. They love the Strokes. This is going to be huge. I called him up a week later, and I basically said, dude, you got to take David Cross out. What do you mean I got to take David Cross out? Like, well, for the first 45 seconds in the video, he's talking, doing all this stand-up stuff as a DJ. Yeah, isn't that hilarious? Sure. 60% of the people never heard one note of the song. You wouldn't spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a video that 60% of the people who showed intent to hear your song didn't hear one note. This is what's happening right now. And the reality also is, part of the reason why you have to engage people fast is not just because they have very limited time span, but they have a lot of distractions. Go and listening to it on Spotify, and all of a sudden you got right there, it's like, oh, well, what are my friends listening to? The minute that song stops grabbing your attention, they're on to the next thing. On YouTube, oh, this video sucks. Oh, what else are you recommending to me? The reality is that we have so much distraction going on in our lives that we can't ill afford any time to let ourselves be distracted when we're trying to get people into a song. You have to embrace them. Here's another thing that's very important about this. When you have a song and somebody goes and you listen to a song and you say, I'm not into it, and you go and skip to the next song, or you go to the next video, or you do the next thing. The truth of the matter is, when that happens, that person now has a negative connotation about your song. Doesn't matter if the song's good, doesn't matter if the song actually has a place in that person's life. It now has a negative connotation because they performed a negative action on that song. You think about that for a second. Is that when you go in your brain and you perform a negative action, no matter what the song, media, it doesn't matter what it is, no matter what it would do to your life, the reality is that your brain will constantly tell you, you don't like that. So when a month later somebody says, oh man, you got to check out that song, you're going to be like, that song? Yeah, it's not just all right. Because you made a negative connotation. So your job, whether it's going to be creating a song or working with the songs that you want to market, your job is going to be to make sure that you're getting people embraced in it as quickly as you can. Because basically what we found is that in the discovery process, only about half of the people that go to hear a song for a first time hear 10 seconds. Only about half of the people listen to 10 seconds. Those of you that have YouTube channels, if you've ever checked your analytics and ever looked to watch when you have a video that has a decent amount of traction, YouTube has a really nice little chart that basically shows you how long people are staying and watching the video. And the reality is that roughly about 20 to 30% of all views are gone in 10 to 15 seconds. You'll see in the very beginning, you'll see it like literally just goes like this. And in Spotify, it tends to be even worse. When they know a song, of course, they're going to stick around. It's familiar. They're happy with it. But when they're discovering it, they really only hear 10 seconds. But again, remember what's most important is it's the first 10 seconds. You have to remember that. I can't tell you how many people still to this day come up to me and they spend so much time working on the hook and spend absolutely no time on the intro. The intro is worth way more than the hook nowadays. And by the way, the interesting thing is that this isn't, again, as I was mentioning before, this isn't some new technological thing that happened just because the internet came around. In reality, actually, is that technology has actually always dictated the approximate length of the intros to the songs. This is the average length of #1 pop song intros from 1955 to the present. And in 1955, you basically started with DJs and 45s, and they didn't really have a lot of space because the records that were going at that particular time only had about 3 minutes worth of music that they could hold. So they didn't have enough time to actually make an intro. So the intros were short. All of a sudden, intros started creeping up in the 60s and the 70s, which coincided with the LP, which meant that more people could actually put more music on, and they could actually listen to more music. Peaked in the 80s with cassettes, because cassettes were a captive audience. It was so much of a pain to actually move between songs on a cassette. It actually allowed you to be able to have longer intros. Slowed down a little bit in the 90s, but look what happens here in these last 2 bits when we get to the 2000s. All of a sudden, the average length of an intro goes from 14 to, guess what, 7 seconds. And the thing is that what ends up happening is you can see this is going on a very nice steep bell curve. There's never been a dramatic impact like that during any point in pop music history, except when the internet came along. And ever since then, it's pretty much consistently been the case, where it's been roughly about 7 seconds. And again, it's technology dictating it. It's the 45s having too little space. It's the DJs having primitive equipment that didn't allow them to cue up songs effectively. All of these things affected the music that you heard. I like to say it, it's like, if, Stairway to Heaven as a 6 to 7 minute song, when music was mostly consumed on 45s and they could only hold 3 to 3.5 minutes, if Led Zeppelin existed, they could never have created Stairway to Heaven because it wouldn't fit. Just physically could not have been created. Skip that. I'm just going to skip ahead a little bit here because I want to get to this. So this is the current, just to kind of show you this is the current top 25 most played songs right now on Spotify. And if you go and look through all of these, you'll go and see that, there's, because people always point this out to me, there's always exceptions to rules. There's plenty of songs that have, 19-second intros, 26 seconds. But here's the interesting thing. The average of all of the top 25 songs right now is actually, as it currently stands, 8.3 seconds. This number, and I've been doing these talks for about 5 years now, this number never wavers between 6.5 and 8.5 seconds. I've never seen it leave that range in 5 years. It's, sometimes it goes a little bit up. Right now it's a little bit on the high side, but always right there within that range. More importantly, 28% of the top songs right now have no intro whatsoever. This is also pretty consistently, roughly a third of the biggest pop songs of the last several years have no intro whatsoever. And by no intro, basically, I mean that vocals come in. That vocals come in right at the beginning. One, it might have an intro because, you got a hip-hop artist who's shouting out a bunch of names at the beginning, maybe. But the reality is that still classifies as an intro. Or lack of intro, excuse me. Because here's an interesting thing. Most people don't tend to think about what vocals do. But how many of you have ever had that terrible thing where a song is stuck in your head all day and you don't know why? Right? We've all had that. The reason why that happens is an interesting phenomenon. People like to hear phrases of songs. For those of you that are creators of songs, listen up, because this is a very, very key point that will change the way you make music. People like to hear phrases of songs, and people like to be polite to people speaking, and people also don't like to interrupt. It's just a natural human condition. When you have a song that's familiar to you, and inadvertently you stop listening to that song before a phrase of that song is completed. You arrive at your destination, you turn off your car, you take your earbuds out, you listening to a song in a store and you just leave the store not thinking about the song that's playing. All of a sudden now 10 minutes later you can't get that song out of your head and you can't figure out why. It's a really simple reason why. It's because you did not complete the song and your brain is attempting to do it for you. What happens is that if your brain doesn't hear a completion, your brain struggles to complete it because it won't feel connected unless it does. Now the interesting thing about that is how that relates to vocals. Because here's the interesting thing. I always talk about, I'm a big studier of body language. I'm a big studier of speech patterns. And there's an interesting thing, and you can always try this out. Like when you're talking to somebody, you can actually manipulate the conversation. How exactly do you manipulate the conversation? This isn't a perfect example because I'm here speaking in front of you guys right now, so I kind of have your attention by default. But what I can do is I can actually take my cadence of my voice, talk in a very, very specific way that allows me to create a big run-on sentence. And what that run-on sentence does is makes it very difficult if we were to have a conversation for you to interrupt me. So by me talking in this way, with specific ways to inflect my voice, it basically makes everybody feel uncomfortable. So even if you wanted to try to interrupt me now, you couldn't, because my voice doesn't allow you to interrupt the conversation, and I can manipulate my voice to be that way until I want you to interrupt the conversation, which I'll do right now. You feel that though? When I go and I actually dim my voice down to signal to you that I've completed my sentence, you feel an opportunity. You feel a weight that's lifted. The same thing happens with vocals in music. When people hear vocals in music, people, oddly enough, don't want to interrupt somebody. They think it's rude. So why do you see, I mean, how many times do you hear a song where somebody at the beginning of the song is literally rapping or singing all mealy-mouthed for like 20 seconds on end and just keeps going and going and going, and you think, oh God, this is annoying, right? We all know some of those songs. They're working to make sure that you don't interrupt them by changing the song. What they're doing is by vocally communicating to you that they are not finished with their phrase, they are trying to get you past that point so that you do not skip that song. Because guess what? This is the other interesting thing that the data shows. Once you get past 7 seconds, the user is highly likely to listen to the entire song. So what they're trying to do when you put vocals and you put extensive vocals up in the front of the song, what you're actually able to do is you're actually able to draw people in. And the further they get past that 10-second mark, the longer they get to that point, the more likely that that person is committed to that song. They're in it for the long haul at that point. And by getting somebody through those initial 10 seconds where they're likely to make a decision, you push them past that point, then you radically increase the likelihood that they are going to listen to a larger portion of the song, and more importantly, that they're going to be highly likely to listen to the whole song. And guess what? If somebody listens to the whole song, they are much more likely to listen to that song twice. And what's most important is getting that second listen, as we discussed. Because remember, if you skip to another song or another piece of media in the middle of the song, then you're creating a negative action. If that's the case, then the opposite also must be true. If you can get somebody to complete the song, then the brain will signal to them that they have a positive reaction to the song. Believe it or not, you are much more likely to like a song that you've heard all the way through in a genre that you hate than a song that you haven't listened fully in a genre that you love. Because your brain will just have that positive connotation. One way to do this is through multiple versions. Now, video, and kind of show this on some YouTube examples. Video is probably the easiest way to do this. Why not be able to go and when you're marketing music, have multiple videos? What's the benefit of having a lyric video plus an actual video? I get to listen to the song twice. What's the benefit of having live versions up? I get to listen to the song again. What's the benefit of having a remix? What's the benefit of having an acoustic version? What's the benefit of having all of these things? The benefit of having all of those is you get somebody to listen to the song again. Record companies and publishing companies right now are making an active role in finding YouTube cover artists. 5 years ago, that was the last people they wanted to go out. You're killing our sales. You're destroying our song. Now they're going and saying, buddy! Why? Because they get the multiple listens of the song. Those YouTube covers help make the song more familiar. If you're working with artists and your buddy is working with artists, why don't you go and actually do something where you go and not just cross-promote each other, have the artists go and record each other's songs. Now you both get the second listen by both appealing to two new fan bases to be able to grow. There's no right or wrong answer to how you need to do this. It's about how you need to think about it. It's about how you need to think about multiple versions of a song to get to multiple listens of a song to make it something that is familiar. And part of the other reason for it is who's got the time? The other important thing, especially as we're moving now to the world of streaming, this is crucial. All right. This is crucial now when it comes to revenue that you need to generate from streaming. When it was about a sale, you basically had their money. I don't care if you listen to it once, twice, or a million times. I have your money. Now you need to make money every time that they listen. And the biggest issue that you will confront is the fact that you all have a finite amount of time to listen. You all came here from somewhere else, and I'm sure many of you were listening to music between that somewhere else and here. When you got here, you stopped listening to music. It is a finite amount of time. It's physically possible for you to only listen to a certain number of songs. And as more and more of those experiences are going to be monetized and part of what will make you money with the music that you work with, the more that happens, the more it's important for you to recognize that and figure out, how am I going to get my songs in there? Because it doesn't matter whether you're going to a destination, whether you're listening to music during schoolwork, or you're going out for the evening. The reality is that you have a finite amount of time. So say you basically have an hour. In an average 4-minute song, that means you basically can listen to 15 songs. So you go, and we'll just use Pandora as an example. The reality is that the other reason why you need to make sure that you impact somebody with that intro to the song, to make sure that they hear your song and not somebody else's song, is because if they don't listen to your song, you've basically given the opportunity for somebody else to make the money you should have made. Think about this for a second, because most people don't. If you fail to make a quality song that somebody wants to listen to, at that particular moment, when they don't listen to your song, you are then giving the competition an opportunity to make money that you could have had. Because basically, if I have 15 songs that I can listen to, and I skip this one, well, I didn't make money, and song number 16 on that playlist all of a sudden gets played. Now all of a sudden song 16 makes money, whereas if they played my song based on the finite amount of time, I would never have made that money. On the other hand, if I can make my song something that people really want to listen to, then they'll never get to that song 16. And then all of a sudden, now that song doesn't have a chance to crowd that person's brain. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter whether you're getting songs by your social feeds. It doesn't matter whether you're getting songs by playlists on Spotify, on Pandora. What matters is the fact that when you have a song, you have an obligation for somebody who's working with the song as a business to make sure that that song is good enough to occupy that person's time. It is much more important to make sure that